The Nottingham Sports Car Club was founded in 1948. From the very early days, the film unit was developed by Derek Truman. The other member of the original team was Pat Stilley, who we see here with Reg Parnell at Gamston and Raymond Mays and Mike Hawthorne at Silverstone. During the 1960s, the club's policy of filmmaking by enthusiastic volunteers continued. This is Jerry Walton and his crew in action at Mallory Park. Members continued to record the club's dedicated involvement with sprinting during the 1980s and the early 90s. In 1998, our Jubilee year, the film unit was formally resurrected, enabling a new generation to cherish those magic moments.
One fell sweep, just listen to them.
Bruce Widowson introduces us to Tony Marsh and Roger Kilty at Donnington. The waters from Thoresby Lake flow via the twin rivers of Meaden and Mourne. These join to form the River Idle at the rear of Gamston Airport. This story is about a unique motor club. Their return journey spans 50 years.
Actually started where the initiative came from. And thinking back into the late 20s and 30s, there was a very famous Nottingham son named Sir Henry Birkin. It was Birkin's the lace manufacturers. He became, of course, Tim Birkin, associated with Bentleys and more, etc., etc.
During 1998, the Nottingham Sports Car Club attended a static display in the Old Market Square. This was organised by the City Council. Earlier in the year, which was the Jubilee anniversary of the club, there had been a reunion for former members at the Donnington Manor Hotel.
My name is Gordon Peters. I'm current chairman of Nottingham Sports Car Club. Vice Selby, Bruce Widowson, gentleman in the white shirt here, who has brought us all together today.
Some of you, of course, will remember me. I first came involved with the club in '61. I'd like just to introduce you to my co-conspirators in organising the event today from the previous members. Not easy for you to wait here, but there's Roger Fell doing the video. Mike Mayfield, Mike's about something, yes he's there, and Len Taft, somewhere there, Len, well done. I'd just like to mention Robert Healis and John Radford, who kindly provided the originals of the photographs you see behind me, which we reproduced. John was the founder treasurer of the club, and he's one of the original team. We're very pleased to have you here today, sir.
Thank you very much. The very beginning of the club really was Geoffrey Holt, and Alan Withers, who were great friends, and they both had 2-litre Lagondas, and that's really where it all began. I think they wanted to put on some competitions for these similar cars, And the club was actually founded in Alan Withers' office, which is opposite what's now the Victoria Centre in Nottingham. It was an insurance office, and that's where we founded it. Geoffrey was the chairman, Alan was the secretary, and I was the treasurer.
Geoff Holt was the founding chairman of the Nottingham Sports Car Club. He was the foreman at Hooley's Garage.
I can't help reminding her that another founder member was her father-in-law. I think it was Percy Andrew, wasn't it, Dina? And he became a member to help us financially. I think his son encouraged him to do that. And he was very much a man of business, and he wanted a receipt. And that really did strain the club's organisation to produce a receipt right at the very beginning.
This was the Percy Andrew factory at Bulwell. The Midland Railway line in the foreground still survives. This photograph shows Percy Andrew at the 1954 dinner dance with daughter-in-law Dina.
Well, I think most members from the early days of the 1950s will remember the Lean Valley Dye Works, where the club had an office for some considerable time.
The first meeting of the club was a concourse at Hazelford on the River Trent. We returned to Hazelford in Jubilee year. The inn is now an old people's home.
The first meeting was at the is it the Ferry Inn at Hazelford, I think, and Geoff Holt's boss, Leslie Hooley, when Leslie went round, and I think Jeff Crossley, who's also a founder member, or very nearly a founder member, he was there with a lovely Invicta he had, and I think he has the first prize, which he's brought along today.
Excellent, yes.
Jeff Crossley, seen here in the car park at Hazelford, went on to enjoy a distinguished motorsport career. There were early sprints at Rufford and Gamston. The first race meeting was at Langer Airfield. Langer operated repair services for Lancaster bombers during the war. Today, there are industrial units and a parachute school.
I think Rufford was the first competitive meeting, which was a sprint course round the gardens at Rufford.
Here we see John Radford in action.
Post World War II, I met a man named Pat Stilley, who was a member of Nottingham Sports Car Club, a founder member, and he said to me one day, "Would you like to come to Gamston with me? I'm going to be racing there." And I said, "Yes, I'd love to come."
This photograph shows Reg Parnell being interviewed for the Nottingham Sports Car Club film unit by Pat Stilley. The other founder of the unit was Derek Truman.
By way of a change to start this meeting off, we're now going to mount the camera and sound equipment in Derek Truman's XK Jaguar you see here, whilst he drives around the circuit and describes the various circuits and bumps to you.
The NSCC is delighted to advise having now traced Pat to his home in the east of England. This was too late to send him an invitation to the Jubilee reunion, but we hope to welcome him back to the club soon.
You'll notice that there's quite a number of cars being hurriedly prepared, and I should describe the whole place as an absolute hive of activity. I mean, there's a very type of motor cars here, from XK Jaguars down to unsupercharged 750cc Austins, with quite a sprinkling of the faster type of motor car. The first race of the meeting And it looks to me as though this Dinah Panhard saloon looks like being a very, very close finisher in this event. And very nice indeed it is to see that Dick Pannell, a member of the Nottingham Sports Car Club, driving an unsupercharged 750cc MG, gets the checkered flag as number 1. Closely followed, or reasonably closely followed by number 19, was third.
What was I? I used to be in race control or doing the programmes or even flag marshalling, that sort of thing.
What were the big differences you noticed when the club opened up Mallory Park compared to the Gamston days?
The protection, so-called protection of the marshals and the public. Because all you had at Gamston sort of thing was the flag marshals used to stand behind a 45-gallon barrel filled with sand or straw bales. And the public, all that kept them back was a rope. But nobody ever came over the rope onto the track sort of thing, and they just used to go like that.
And bits of string and oil drums keeping the spectators from the traffic.
Here's Hawthorne in the Riley, having built up a considerable lead in race 2. He's swinging into the bottom corner past the straight now. I should think he's at least 1,000 yards in front of number 45, Stokes in the Riley, followed by another Riley, number 96. G drifting into the corner here, and a whole bunch of them coming round in one fell sweep. Just listen to them. Here comes Derek Truman in the Jaguar. He's really motoring very, very fast indeed. This car really is going well today. Here we are, Derek Truman's coming up very, very fast to pass Tyra's BMW. Will he get by on the bend? He's taking it on the outside. This is very, very dangerous. He's trying very, very hard to get by. Tyra's let him get through. Very well done indeed. And a lovely piece of driving there. Jaguar's coming up now, pretty fast into this top corner. This is a most exciting race. Tyra's already gone off the road once. We hope there aren't going to be any more incidents. Here's Derek Truman drifting around at really colossal speed. Put his foot down, accelerates away down the straight.
For a time, the Gamston venue was shared with the Sheffield and Hallamshire Club, who also did motorcycle racing. A popular event was the Inter-Club Challenge.
Between the Nottingham Sports Car Club and the Sheffield and Hallamshire Club. The starter has got his flag up, the cars are all ready. They're off! This is going to be a very, very exciting race indeed, and a very, very keen one too. Truman's in the lead. 3 in the challenge race between Nottingham and Sheffield clubs. Derek Truman still holding a very good lead, and a Nottingham member, Howarth, in an XK Jaguar, has moved up into second position. Scragg, also of Nottingham, on an XK Jaguar, has passed Pilkington and taken third position. These boys really are motoring now, and there's no messing about it, believe you me. Absolutely colossal race. Howarth, also of Nottingham, has passed Derek Truman of the Nottingham Club as well in the XK, and they're both going absolutely flat out down the straight here towards the start. They must be doing something approaching over 100 miles an hour down here. Third position is still held by Scragg of the Nottingham Club on an XK, followed by Pilkington, the first Sheffield man, also on an XK. The finish of this challenge race between Nottingham and Sheffield Hallamshire clubs. Howarth of the Nottingham Club wins with the XK Jaguar. Second man home, Derek Truman of the Nottingham Club in his XK Jaguar. Third position and quite a way back is Pilkington of the Sheffield and Hallamshire Club, also driving an XK Jaguar.
And you may also be interested to know that Mike Hawthorne had his first race with the Nottingham Sports Car Club at Gamston. I remember seeing him race at Aintree, and he always wore a bow tie.
What sticks in my mind is that wonderful driver we had turning up in a TT Riley and later becoming the first world champion. In fact, the great Mike Hawthorne.
Oh, yes.
Because he came to our earliest meetings in that TT Riley and later went on to become world champion, which a lot claim they're only 1 point behind, but they may as well have been 100.
And of course also you used to get Mike Hawthorne, Peter Collins, Dennis Poor, Sidney Allard.
Here's Hawthorne in the Riley, having built up a considerable lead in race 2. He's swinging into the bottom corner past the straight now. I should think he's at least 1,000 yards in front of number 45, Stokes in the Riley, followed followed by another Riley number 96. There's the winner, Peter Collins, driving his JBS Norton engines. A very neat and very well won race. Dennis Bohr in second position, followed by Bob Gerrard. Bob's closing up. Now here we've got a shot of an Allard sports car, and with it I have a very famous person with me today, Mr. Sidney Allard. Now this is the first time you've been up at Ganston, Mr. Allard, isn't it?
Yes, that's right.
Well, what do you think of the circuit as a whole?
It'll be very nice if it dries up.
Yes, well that's the trouble today, isn't
A bit
it?
slippery
really?
at the moment.
Yes. Well, as you know, the Nottingham Car Club held the first meeting here in Easter, in March, and it poured rain all day. We thought we'd have a bit better luck today, but it doesn't look too hopeful, does it?
Well, we like good weather on August bank holiday, don't we?
Well, we'll try and hope that it'll come along. Anyway, how's the car going?
Well, the present moment it's not going too well.
Oh, what's the
Don't know
trouble?
why. I don't know, I'm just sort of missing on one cylinder.
Oh dear.
We've got 7 left, but it isn't really good enough.
Well, that's one thing with a motor like this. If you're only firing on 4, you're firing on as many as
Yes.
some people are, aren't you?
That's right.
Gives you the front view of a very, very famous white Fraser-Nash BMW. And here I have with me Mr. Gilbert Tile from Liverpool, the owner. Well, Gilly, it's very, very nice having you up here again at Gamston. How are you finding things today?
Oh, well, not too bad, but I think it's getting a bit worn out now. It doesn't seem to be going quite as fast.
Well, we have Mr. Raymond Mays. Now, it's very, very nice to welcome you here to Gamston today, Mr. Mays. I believe it's the first time you've ever come up to this circuit.
Yes, it's the very first time, and I'm very happy to be here.
Well, that's very nice of you to say that.
If I may.
Yes.
That is how pleased I am to have my old type here for Reg Parnell to drive.
Oh, yes. We're looking forward to that, and we're hoping, too, that Reg is going to beat his existing lap record with your car.
I very much hope so. It'd give me a lot of pleasure if he did.
Very nice to welcome you here to Gamston, Mr. Parnell. We consider you, our premier motor racing driver. What do you think of the circuit today?
Well, it's much improved since the last time I was here. When I was here last time, I think you've put a lot of work in it since then because there was a lot of loose stones then.
Yes.
I think it would need a lot of labour to
Get it
go
right.
those away.
Yes, it was a bit dodgy. You're driving around with Moses the RA today, is that right?
That's quite right.
Oh, we hope to see that 90 mile an hour odd lap record go with a bang. Do you think you'll do it?
Well, it all depends upon the weather, really, isn't it?
Before the official opening of the circuit, we would like to just give you this shot of the Nottingham Sports Car Club's new scoreboard here opposite the start.
Welcome to the Nottingham Sports Car.
Well, here we have the cars lined up for the first event, and on the left of the film here you have the Mark 7 Jaguar, driven by Mr. Claude Truman, which has just toured round and opened the circuit, and a truly beautiful car. It is, well, I don't think there is a more lovely car being marketed today with performance that lives right up to all expectations. By way of a change to start this meeting off, we're now going to mount the camera and sound equipment in Derek Truman's XK Jaguar, you see here, whilst he drives around the circuit and describes the various circuits and bumps to you. So fasten your safety belts and hold on to your hats, as here we go.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'm afraid we shan't get any, it won't be possible for me to give you any commentary because we've found that the noise is far too great. So we'll just have to let the car speak for itself. Keep on. On? Yes. Okay. Well, you switched off then? Yes, you're on. Go on. Okay. Righto. I think you can hear me now. Without going down the finishing straight. Can you hear me? Yes. Go ahead. Now. We're down the finishing straight now. There looks like Tony Booker ahead. Carry on. We'll go past the finishing line and then just take you up to the Gamston corner. Okay.
And we have some very interesting motor cars in this particular field. We have two Cooper MGs, one Doug Riders, driven by Tony Booker, and the other one driven by Jackie Reese. Ken Shipside in his standard road model TD, having blown up his TD Special. He's put the high compression head on his road car and he's running that today. John Dalton in his Le Mans MG, and Ken Downing's very fast Connaught. Another interesting motor car amongst this field is the ex-Sutherland TC MG, which is considerably rapid. The starter's got his flag up, they're revving up now. Let's see if John Dalton gets away to the front. Yes, he's taking over, the Cooper MG's taking it. Watch them. Now here comes the second man. It's Jackie Reese in the Cooper MG, Ken Downing the leader having gone through. Third place is Tommy Wise in the Jupiter, and fourth John Dalton, and Tony Booker right on his tail. Third place is now held by the Jarrett Jupiter. John Dalton's in fourth place, and Tony Booker harrying him like the clappers. I wonder if he'll get by. Here's Ken Downing the winner in his Connaught. Now we're showing you the start of the 2.5 litre unsupercharged sports car race from Rufford Corner. And as they accelerate away, it's John Walton in the Fraser Nash that leaps into the lead, followed by David Clark and Tyra passing on the outside. Lap 4, and it's still John Walton, Gilly Tyra and David Clark, and this is the best race I've seen at Gamston. What an exciting race. Tyra has just managed to get past John Walton on the straight, and they're coming down to take the checkered flag neck and neck, but I'm afraid Gilly's just done it by a few lengths. And in third position, we've got David Clark in his Fraser Nash. Here they are coming round the corner. Just look at them. What a wonderful race. A really wonderful race.
The club developed a sprint programme side by side with racing.
There was a race meeting at Alton Park in Cheshire. The main race was said to have been won by Les Leston. This library film shows the circuit.
Now, this car that I'm standing alongside at the moment is a Mark 9 Lotus with an 1172 Ford engine modified. Now, alongside me here, I've got the driver and owner of the car, Mr. Michael McDowell of Cheltenham. Now, how have you got on today, Mr. McDowell, with your practicing?
Well, I'm very pleased with it so far. The car seems to be going extremely well.
Yes.
I was a little wary going out first of all in practice, because I think it's a very tricky circuit, but I've really enjoyed myself on the last few laps, and I'm really, really happy with the motor car at the present moment.
Good. Well, we're very pleased to see you up here at the Nottingham Car Club meeting, and we trust that you'll have an enjoyable day of sport, and perhaps if we run another meeting here, you'll be only too pleased to come.
Oh, yes, I certainly will again.
Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. Goodbye.
This gentleman that I'm standing with, or sitting on his car with here now, needs no introduction to Nottingham members. It's John Dalton, one of the founder members of the Nottingham Car Club, who's performing today with his 100S. Now, how have you got on today, John, with your practicing in this car?
Well, not as good as I was hoping to, but I think we can get a bit more out of it during the race.
So now you know he's going to try and get a bit more out of it during the race, and I'm quite sure that he'll do a lot better than a lot of people seem to think.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, John. Another very interesting car that we've got at Alton today is this 1.5 litre Connaught engine machine, which I'm standing here beside with Mr. George Boyle, the well-known car tuner. Now, Mr. Boyle, if you'll just spare us one moment, can you tell us briefly a little bit about this motor car?
Well, matter of fact, it's a very wonderful little motor car. We raced it at Le Salon Coupe in Paris.
Yes.
We came first in our class in that, and we've had a lot of smaller events we've been lucky enough to come first with.
Yes, because a lot of people ask us, you know, about these sports cars, what will it do? Approximately, what sort of maximum speed do you think you'll get up to today on the circuit? I know it doesn't really have a lot of bearing, but can you give us some idea?
Well,
The only bearing we can give is Sterling Moscow averaged about 130 at Montlhéry.
Oh, that's very good.
That was maximum speed,
Yes.
132.
Well, it's very good of you to give us this information. We're very pleased to see you here today, and we do trust that both the car and Mr. Kirkpatrick will have a very successful meeting. And again, many thanks for you.
Thank you very much indeed. I hope he does, and don't prang it, that's the main thing.
Oh, I don't think he'll do that. Some competitors, even during practice periods, have their trials and tribulations, and Naylor's Lotus Connaught here is no exception. He's just had to have new front dampers fitted, and as you can see, the whole of the front cowling of the car comes off to facilitate this operation. This is the third race of the afternoon, a handicap event for production sports cars, and we've got the TR2 number 69, 39, and the Healy number 42 just coming through, going into the SO bend as the camera follows them round here. Now here we've got the bigger cars, the Austin Healy 2.6, followed by a Jaguar XK 120, number 7, other Austin Healy. That car number 28, just going into the corner now, is the 100S Healy owned by John Dalton. On lap 3 of this third race, which is a handicap event for sports cars, series production, we've got the leader coming through, number 59, in the TR2, braking as he goes into SO bend. And we've got second man up, another TR2, we'll give you the number in a moment, 39, Wayne, and that 28 just gone by was the Austin Healy 100, driven by John Dalton, the Model 100 with the disc brakes. Here's John Dalton just about to pass the leading car on his last lap of event 3 as he comes round here in towards the SO bend. John Dalton are going to win this race in the 100S Healy. In this meeting, events 4 and 5 were combined into one race, and this is the first lap. Down by the picturesque SO bend alongside the lake, we show the George Boyle prepared and tuned Connaught leading the Lotus number 45. The whole stream of cars stream into the bend here. Still down in the region of SO bend, we follow 45, the Connaught engined Lotus, through the corner here, which is very steeply banked. Here's the second man up. The Connaught. Third man up is the 2-litre Fraser Nash, number 62. A whole gaggle of Lotuses coming into the out of this bend together. This lap comes the Connaught engined Lotus, number 45, driven by B. Naylor. This is in SO bend here. Here comes second man. This is the Fraser Nash, number 62, driven by Colin Murray. Very quiet, very much quieter than the Lotus. In the 500cc event, which has run over 10 laps, we've got the leader Beaucheur Jones just coming into view now, under the bridge, followed by second man out, Ferguson, both on Coopers with the double knocker Norton engine. The rest of the field streaming out behind. Into his 8th lap is Beaucheur Jones in the Cooper Norton, followed by Ferguson, also in a Cooper Norton. Here's Ferguson. A whole bunch of back markers coming up under the motor bridge here, where we've got the camera stationed.
In the meantime, the sprint programme continued with some memorable events at Alton Towers. racing continued with less frequent meetings at Silverstone. Dates at this popular circuit had been negotiated in return for the NSCC providing teams of up to 30 trained marshals for the BRDC to use at their major events.
On the second lap, it's still Stacey in the Lotus, leading into the corner here. Here's Nixon in the Cooper, Sherrill in the Austin Healey Hamlet.
The club was still diversified on a broad base. Driving tests continue to form a good starter for motorsport events.
I helped to organise the Nottingham Rally, which was the rally of the year.
Alf Butcher. Alf, you were a member in the early days of the club. If you'd like to tell me a little bit about that and when you started, please.
Yes, I would think it was possibly around about 1950. It might even have been a year before, a year after. Nottingham Rally was the first one that I entered. Then there was the Pilkington Rally, of course, and then the Hooley. My first one was a 1.5 litre Riley. That was followed up with a ZB Magnet, which I had an HRG crossflow head put on.
NSCC, the first 50 years, Part 2.
You'll notice that there's quite a number of cars being hurriedly prepared, and I should describe the whole place as an absolute hive of activity.
In Part 1, we saw how the Nottingham Sports Car Club was founded. Many famous names had featured in the story.
Hawthorne in the Riley, having built up a considerable lead in race 2. He's swinging into the bottom corner past the straight now. I should think he's at least 1,000 yards in front of number 45, Stokes in the Riley.
The aims of the club were to promote quality motorsport events for the benefit of the members. Although sometimes things did not go as planned. A long-serving member who would eventually become club president was Roy Preston.
When I was demobbed in 1951, my first car was an Austin 7 Special, and being a young blood with a flat hat and a little sports car, the sports car club was the next stepping stone.
By Hawthorne in the 1100cc Riley. Here comes HRG, also swinging into the corner, not quite as fast as Dalton, followed by 65 and TCMG, nearly took the bins with him there. A whole bunch of cars now, HRG, MG, another HRG, two more TCMGs.
The first part of our story ended in 1957. The new fishing lake had just been constructed at Mallory Park. Also in 1957, the club's news sheet had expanded into a magazine under the title of Bulletin. The editor was Derek Marsh. A leading article in this second edition of the magazine was written by Len Taft.
My job became the liaison between race control and timekeepers. Till about 3 or 4 meetings on, a colleague and I was standing outside race control having a break, and I was watching somebody across the road painting numbers on the car, and I noticed with going slow the hand was shaking. I just casually said, I reckon I could do that. Unbeknown to me, the chairman of the club, Mike Andrews, and the secretary, Arthur Knowles, came out of race control, promptly put a hand on my shoulder and says, we'll get the gear, you've got the job. And I was painting numbers on cars for about the next 20 years.
There was also a report that the club's marshal contingent to the Daily Express International at Silverstone had been oversubscribed. In addition, the club had negotiated film rights with the BRDC.
Ladies and gentlemen, amongst the scene of seething activity in the pits here, I'd like you to meet the gentleman who's been very kind and given us all the facilities to make this film. I refer, of course, to Mr. John Easton Gibson.
Well, we're very glad to be able to help you.
Thank you.
The snag is with approximately 100,000 people coming to a race meeting, there are usually 101,000 people wanting assistance.
That's very true.
But as this film is, I believe, for motor clubs,
That's right, yes.
and as, of course, it's showing our motor race, we're very pleased to give you any help we can. And we hope, of course, that we'll have a marvellous day's racing.
Yes, well, so do we, Mr. Easton Gibson, and we hope to let you have a copy of the film to see what
Good.
you think of it. And
Thank you
very, very much indeed.
Thank you.
Curate class, a van with one of their fitters outside working on Ninian Sanderson's car, or Ron Flockett's car. You may hear somebody that needs no introduction to you, Mr. Raymond Mays of the BRM Keep. Now, Mr. Mays, I believe this is the first time we've actually had 3 of the team cars competing in a major British meeting.
Yes, that's quite correct. It's the first time 3 have ever competed this year.
I see. And the drivers today are?
Well, the drivers today are Jean Berard, the French champion, who's number 2 in the Maserati team,
Yes.
the Fangio,
Uh-huh.
and Harry Schell, who's equally well known, and our own Ron Flockhart, who won Le Mans this year.
Sit up. Here's a close-up view of the mechanics of the BRM Keep lifting off the bonnet of car number 7, which is to be driven today by Harry Schell. Twin overhead camshaft engine with very, very large valves, much larger bore than stroke. The air intake on the left can be seen for the Weber carburetors, and the 2 scoops just on the side of the windscreen, which you may be discerned behind the mechanics, are to keep the cockpit cool. Without any doubt, the enigma of British racing, but a motor car, an engine which pokes out more BHP than any other Grand Prix car on the road today. The pit's grandstand, crushed in by thousands of people. We've managed to struggle up with the camera and gear, and we've got all the drivers lined up for the start of race 1, which starts at 10:15. This is a sports car race for cars of 1100 and 1500cc. Now here you see all the drivers lined up on their marks, waiting for the flag to drop, which is due to go any second now. Now we'll hold the camera on them. They're off, let it go. Now there'll be such a roar of noise when they start, we won't be this anymore, so we'll leave it for that now and listen. It's a BRM. There he goes through Beckett's. The leader, Jean Berard, number 6 BRM. And the Cooper Climaxes, number 35, which is driven by Roy Salvadori there. For the Unlimited Sports Car Race, we've come down to Stowe Corner, and it's an Aston Martin in the lead, yes. It's Brooks and an Aston Martin as they come into Stowe. He's being very hard pressed by number 24. Here's the leading 2-litre car. Number 58, leading the 2-litre class. Lotus, leading the 2-litre class. There he goes, number 58, Brian Naylor. And he's leading a quite a number of the Unlimited class as well, and driving remarkably well. 6181, the MG Special, recently come back from Utah, where it's been breaking records at 245 miles an hour. Some of the BMC competition department here, just changing a wheel prior to it making its lap domino. Return from Utah, where it was driven by Sterling Moss, at a speed of over 245 miles an hour. Now, as Derek lifts the camera up and I can see myself, you'll see I'm with two gentlemen. On my right here is Mr. Sidney Enever, Chief Designer of MG Car Company. On my left, Mr. John Thornley, the Managing Director of the MG Car Company. Is that correct?
The whole idea of this EX181 was proposed by Mr. Thornley. Our own record that was held in 1939. Yes. It's been standing for so long, we thought we ought to do something about it.
Well, the winning BRM, just coming into our picture now, lapping at about 95. He's eased off, he's got just a terrific lead. Here he goes through Club Corner. Harry Shell, number 7 in the BRM. Ecuricas Le Mans Jaguar coming round on a lap of honour, and what a reception they're getting. A wonderful reception from this winning Ecuricas Le Mans Jaguar on its lap of honour. The production car race is always a feature of Daily Express meetings, and we've got the camera up at Cops to see the cars coming through, and it's a 3.4 Jaguar in the lead. It's Hawthorne, the 3.4 Jaguar as they come through. Like Hawthorne, who's been down at Silverstone today.
Interesting, because we've got this year the cars had to be very near as production.
Near standard, yes.
And last year that they weren't. You could add different carburetors, different exhaust systems. But this year they were as near standard as on ones on the road.
The last significant happening of 1957 went almost unrecorded in the club's history. The RAF, having reopened Gamston Airfield in May 1953 for Meteor and Vampire advanced pilot training, finally vacated the site. The runways would lie unused for several years. Driving tests continued for grassroots enthusiasts. The Remy depot at Newark was used, the adjutant being a club member.
From motor racing, they're putting on a speedboat event at Mallory Park today, and I have with me here the owner of Jenny, a Derby class hydroplane. David, is that right?
That's right, yes.
Mr. David Ashmore, who is also a member of the Nottingham Car Club. Now, David, very quickly, can you tell us a little bit about Jenny?
Yes, well, it's
Back at Mallory Park, the lake had now been flooded to its full depth.
Engine.
It's a 410 with a supercharger on.
Boost,
How many pounds per square?
Well, about 5.
About 5. And speed, maximum speed, David, everybody's interested in that.
Well, I don't know. I should say 35 to 40.
35 to 40 miles an hour. Well, there goes David and Jenny. See the acceleration as the boat pulls away up the lake here. Very, very fast. I think 35 to 40 miles an hour is just as fast as I said, as 120 on a road. And there she goes across the lake.
There were other changes. Mike Crowe takes up the story.
Ken Cragg took over the sort of mainline work as club secretary. And he appointed himself as clerk of the course, and he had 2 deputies, and that was the beginning of it all. I was one deputy and Ron Walker was the other. And deputy clerk of the course actually ran it. That meant sort of rushing around the circuit in lovely borrowed Jacobus and things on loan from various dealers. And Ken Cragg held himself in reserve in case there was a crisis, and it worked absolutely splendid.
At this meeting in 1958, Innes Ireland and Peter Sargent were rare visitors. Here we see Innes with John Easton Gibson in 1961 at an Alton Park vintage meeting. John Hallam became the club's longest serving chairman.
John, I remember you were club chairman at the time I joined, and you were chairman for an awful number of years.
It was about 13 years.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
Would you like to comment on some of the highlights that you saw during that time under your stewardship?
Well, I think I can add a little bit to might not otherwise get on the record.
Yeah, please.
I think about 1957 I'd acquired a Lotus Mark 6, and I wanted to do some racing, and that was how I came to be involved with the club. And I'd had a couple of seasons racing, and I think I'd tapered off a bit. And at the time, I think Ken Cragg was president, and one of the senior board members was John Starling, who I believe is not here today. And I think they thought it'd be a good idea if they had someone on the board who had active experience of participating in club racing.
The club's success during the late 50s and early 60s was encouraged by this strong administration. Peter Blaney joined the team.
I was an active member for 20 years, from 59 to 79, so I missed the early Gamston days. 20 years is a long time, but by no means a record, as you see from a lot of the other people.
The racing programme attracted many entrants. This is Jack Lambert in his XK150. We will see Jack again later in our story. The September 61 meeting was the first club event to feature the E-Type Jaguar. Truemies of Nottingham provided a course car, and Robin Sturgis of Leicester competed in his first E-Type to carry the 2BBC registration number. The car, with chassis number 12, was later to feature in the film The Italian Job and is believed to exist today. Later on, we will show you another of Robin's two BBC E-Type Jaguars. See if you can spot it. The club has always made time for grassroots enthusiasts.
Today is an excuse, obviously, for nostalgia. Just a few of the little ones I remember. May 1962 was a highlight because we ran an international Formula One meeting at Mallory Park. Competitors included Jack Brabham, Jim Clark, Graham Hill, John Surtees, who won the race and collected 2,000 guineas, which was a very large sum in 1962, I'm sure. An excellent meeting, but very different from present Formula One activities in that the drivers were all highly visible in their cockpits and they were highly accessible in the paddock. And then after the main race, they all turned out again in a mixture of Ferraris, E-Type Jaguars, and put on a GT race afterwards, which is extremely enjoyable in rather a light-hearted way. Anything further from current Formula One, I can't really think. One of the sort of sad episodes about that was that Clive Wormlake, the owner at Mallory, had insisted either negotiated an entry from Sterling Moss, and so number 7 was reserved for Sterling's entry, but of course a few months previous to that he'd been very badly injured, and that was the end of his racing career, so there never was any question of him actually being a starter.
This was a great disappointment for Sterling's cousin, Nottingham dentist Brian Lawson, also an NSCC director. Peter Blaney took over as editor of the Bulletin. The publication was now a full-size magazine with commercial advertising in support. This needed considerable backup from within the club. Peter chaired an editorial committee of 4, which included wife Lorna, Dr. Townsend and Len Taft. The racing programme was now mainly based on Silverstone. This had come about due to the efforts of the directors, in particular Ken Cragg. The Silverstone period was also an important chapter in the club's history. There were some happy memories.
I was reminded by Tony Biddleston downstairs that I borrowed the set of doors off his Mini at one meeting because my fiberglass doors didn't meet scrutineering.
Yes, I remember that now, actually.
In fact, he jokingly said I still owe you for the paint job in the mess I made when I took them off.
Throughout the 60s, there was expansion within the club. This called for a more professional administration. John Hallam again.
We had a board meeting to get hold of a new secretary, and we decided to put an advertisement in the Daily Telegraph. And I can remember the words now. It said, "Unique opportunity for young man aged between 25 and 30." And among a huge quantity of replies, we had a letter which said, "Dear Sir, I am not a young man aged between 25 and 30. That was the two conditions, a young man aged between 25 and 30. And of course, that letter was from Betty Shaw. And of course, we interviewed her, and we were most impressed. And I think it's probably true to say that Betty came, and because of her organisational ability, the club enjoyed probably 10 years of activity, which was unparalleled in the history. We were, as everyone has said who's been into it, very successful.
The reduction in use at Mallory Park sounded alarm bells with some members. They remembered the loss of Gamston. The dream of a venue of our own was always to dwell within the spirit of the club. Around this time, secret negotiations took place for our own motor racing circuit to be built in a disused quarry between Worksop and Sheffield. This would have had the benefit of being screened from the surrounding environment. Sadly, these talks came to naught. In 1966, the club hosted a round of the Players No. 6 Autocross. The tobacco giant, who originated from Nottingham, had put considerable sponsorship money into this previously little-known motorsport discipline. This event introduces us to Furbeck House Farm near Worksop, another North Nottinghamshire venue. In addition to all this activity, the club had always found time to relax. We would take a break with some of the members from the 1950s and 1960s.
No, the Plaisance Yacht Club was another venue where we had a lot of very good dancers and social functions.
Just mentioned the Formula Libre dances, and of course those were a highlight of the thing. And of course in those days we were all a lot younger, and the big attraction of those was the girls used to go to them, and it made a very big difference from getting your hands filthy around engines. Yeah. So it was a super social club in the 60s. It really had a marvellous social life. It was a wonderful club, and it's been wonderful today, Bruce.
I remember one particular highlight going to the Sherwood Rooms to the dance. Formula One Ferrari parked in the middle of the dance floor.
The club has no surviving pictures of Ian Seavright's ex-Morris Trantignon Formula One Ferrari. However, we have this earlier clip of the Truman E-Type demonstrator in pride of place at the Sherwood Rooms. From left to right are Don Levy, Denia Andrew, John Dalton, John Wagstaff, Mike Andrew, Ken Cragg and Dr. John Townsend. Alan Turner, racer turned scrutineer, was to become one of the longest serving members in the club's history.
If you had trouble with the car, somebody would help you out. I remember one occasion where I cracked a cylinder head. And in that particular race I was on the front row of the grid, and the fellow who was next to me on the grid lent me a cylinder head to race. Now I couldn't see that happening nowadays.
We return to the main story in 1967. In that year there were a number of significant developments within the club. Furbeck House Farm, the host venue of the recent Players No. 6 Autocross, became the site of a possible NSCC motor racing circuit. The plan was spearheaded by Ivor Pashley, who we will meet later. In this shot we see the legendary Jaguar Eagle, so named because of its Ford Galaxy engine. The beast was skillfully piloted by an old friend of the NSCC, Barry Wizzo Williams. Over 30 years later, we caught up with Barry at Mallory Park.
Did you want to know about the old Jaguar Eagle?
Yes.
Fearsome beast.
Yes.
Character forming. Wonderful old thing. It taught me a lot of car control, I think. But it was a Jaguar. It had a Ford engine. But of course it's all come round full circle in the end, isn't it?
At the end of the 1967 racing season, the film unit was disbanded. In the winter of that year, the last copy of the Bulletin magazine was produced. The club withdrew from the Furbeck House Farm project at the end of the year, having been offered extra dates at Silverstone for 1968.
A very professional club. It was very well run, and in fact it was so well run that the British Racing Drivers Club, who owned Silverstone, used the Nottingham Sports Car Club to run all the professional meetings apart from the Grand Prix.
Racing with Nottingham Sports Car Club mainly at Silverstone. That was sort of in the highlight of the great years of the club. They used to get some 300 entries at some meetings at Silverstone.
Jeff, you were a mini racer, if I remember rightly.
Jeff Law takes up the story.
There was a big difference between one car and another, even though they were all minis, but there was a very, very big difference, the way they were set up and the way you drove them.
The thing that I always remember in those days that the entry fees used to cost us 50 shillings, and we used to get everything back other than 50 pence or 10 shillings in those days. And even that went in a driver's benevolent fund, so in fact we weren't paying anything to race.
It was a wonderful days, but I think one of the nicest thing about that was when you paid your entry fee, if you turned up, you got your entry fee back. That was the best of the old club. There were proper club events run by enthusiasts.
Very financially successful as well. I mean, I think I'm right in remembering that we once, after sharing our profits with Silverstone, we made £9,000.
A lot of money in those days.
To the extent that we sort of started worrying about all the tax we were paying and difficulties of that kind. And we purchased the freehold of the premises opposite the TBI in West Bridgeford.
The start of the 1970s saw early action in the quest for new circuits. Jeff Bloor again.
The circuits were brilliant. Croft was one of my favourites.
Croft was another former World War II airfield venue. Jack Lambert, seen here in both clips on the left, made the transition from competitor to clerk of the course. He was joined at Croft by wife Reenie as timekeeper and son Brian as starter. Other familiar names in this 1970 list of officials included John Hallam, Alf Natras, Ron Walker, Keith Douglas, Peter and Lorna Blaney, Reg Hallsworth, Roddy Lloyd-Jones, Betty Shaw, Bruce Widowson, and former film unit captain Jerry Walton as chief paddock marshal. Sadly, an attempt to reopen Langer Airfield as a motor racing circuit in that year failed.
By 1971, we were organising 12 meetings in the season. 7 at Silverstone, 3 at Croft, 1 at Thruxton, 1 at Mallory Park. In 71 that year, the Mallory Park meeting included an International Formula 5000 race. Mike Halewood won that. The race was televised, and we soon discovered that the man in charge of the race was not the clerk of the course, it was the producer of the TV programme. Ever thus, I think.
This 1942 picture shows Lancaster bombers of the Royal Canadian Air Force at Croft on part of the perimeter track. This would form the future motor racing circuit. The club's competitors included Chris Meek, Doug Niven, Mick Hill and Ray Davies, who would sprint with the NSCC at Kerborough in the years to come. The search for a venue of our own had not been forgotten. A plan to build a circuit within Southwell Racecourse, on similar lines to Aintree, failed. Planning permission was actually obtained for a circuit at Newark. The Notts Showground was another former World War II airfield. However, commercial negotiations with the owners broke down in 1971. In 1972, storm clouds loomed over the club.
Now, unfortunately, in 1972, we lost the Silverstone meetings. We tried to replace them with dates at Aintree and Cadwell. They were enjoyable meetings, but they weren't profitable. And unfortunately, then we lost our marvellous full-time secretary, Betty Shaw. I'm only thinking today, that was 25 years ago. Betty went to Spain.
I was very saddened when eventually the contracts were changed and the Nottingham Sports Car Club were no longer able to be involved. And in fact, the BRDC took over.
The club revisited Mallory Park in our Jubilee year. Back in 1973, the annual Formula 5000 event became the NSCC's third international race meeting. Tony Sugden, who we will see again in 1998, entered one of the supporting races. We introduce you to Mike Mayfield, who was to become a key player in the years ahead.
The mid-70s racing programme included Croft, Mallory Park and Cadwell Park. There were also meetings at Aintree and Thruxton, but these were less popular.
Other names that featured in the 1970s included Peter Gethin, Tiff Nadell, Bob Evans and Gamston veteran Mick Merrills. The sprint programme, which had been based at Church Lawford and the circuits, now concentrated on the Kerborough venue near Lichfield. Croft was the mainstay of the racing programme, but some of the magic had gone.
And you have to remember that post-war there were dozens, not dozens, but a lot of clubs, like Peterborough Motor Club, Sunback, and Nottingham Sports Car Club were one of many. And it was the major clubs which emerged after the war, like the British Automobile Racing Club, which came from the Junior Car Club of Brooklands before the war, and the BRSCC, these were national clubs, which came from the Half Litre Club, which was the 500cc Formula 3 cars. So the national clubs gradually started to move in, and the minor clubs, and relatively speaking, Nottingham was a minor club because it was regional, they lost control, and the major national clubs took over.
The club sought sponsorship, but without success.
Morale was still good. The newsletter, now edited by Wanda Canham, ran to several pages. The officers did all that was possible to promote the club.
Yes, we had Radio Trent. I was on Radio Trent, broadcast with Mike Mayfield, and that was about the club's activities.
In 1977, the club attended a rally sport day at Hewley's Garage.
Peter Blaney was now president. There was a new chairman of the club, Richard Cox. The team still included some familiar names, Ivor Pashley, Alan Turner and Reg Hallsworth amongst them. There was new blood too, including Secretary Alan Bragg, Terry Hainsworth and the publicity team of Ray Green and Nadine Harrington.
We watched with enormous interest the progress on reforming Donnington Park circuit. It became clear in 1977, early on, after several meetings had been cancelled because of a hard winter delaying the building work, that our meeting in April would be the first. And so the NSCC did indeed reopen Donnington Park. It was a great success, but in the days leading up to it, we had a reduction in the permitted number on each grid from 26 or 28 down to 20, prohibition on single-seat racing cars, and the threat of enforcement of an old right-of-way across the circuit.
Nottingham Sports Car Club are very pleased today to have with us Ivor Pashley, clerk of the course, and Mike Mayfield, the Chief Marshal, from the 1977 first Donnington meeting.
We had about the same number of competitors that you had today, about, I believe, 240-ish. The meeting ran after a traumatic 3 days before the meeting, when on the Wednesday before the day the meeting was off. Local ramblers had found there was a public footpath across the circuit, and they intended to use their prerogative and walk the path on the day of the meeting. This was resolved later on the Saturday by agreeing not to run single-seater cars on the circuit on the opening meeting. The technical legality being that the other cars were road going cars, which they were not really, but that was the ruling, and we could run cars of that class and the races would be officially called a trial.
It certainly was. We'd had plenty of time to recce the circuit. We'd driven the circuit. I remember driving around it with Triumph Dolomite when it was just stone and dust. There was long before there was any tarmac or marshal's post or anything else. But looking through my records recently, I found that we did in fact convene a meeting with the circuit owners on the Saturday prior to the meeting, when we established things like the location marshal post.
The meeting received sponsorship from local Lotus dealer the Else Group. Mike Crowe again.
Went to the very first Donnington Park meeting. I was club steer for that. That was a brilliant day. Everybody came. Colin Chapman came by helicopter.
In 1977, there was a more rural look to the venue. Just prior to our meeting, the circuit had been opened by Gunnar Nilsson in the John Player Team Lotus. Another VIP performance was from the Big Cat. Fashions were different in 1977, so were the super saloons. NSCC stalwart Mick Hill leads this group. Other competitors on the day included James Hunt, Roddy Harvey Bailey, Tony Trimmer, Willie Green, Doug Niven and Mike Lane, who would return to Donnington in 1998. This upturn in the club's fortunes was to be short-lived. David Tyrrell, who had become chairman, explains.
The club obviously had been running meetings up at Croft. We were aware that the Croft situation was going to change. Cadwell, obviously Brands Hatch circuits were becoming involved in Cadwell, which meant that the options were closing down.
We're losing money financially each year on year racing, and that culminated in the selling of number 7 Radcliffe Road in I guess 1977.
The opening meeting at Donnington, obviously, people have said very, very successful. We had several more meetings there. We became very aware that the Donington circuit people were forming their own club.
Unfortunately, we could never get properly established at Donington Park, and it fell to me in this same building, as it happened, at the 1979 annual dinner, to announce that the NSCC was withdrawing from race promotion. It's a sad day.
Many people are not aware that Ivor Pashley, who was one of the mainstays, and myself went down to Mallory and met the owners at Mallory, and we did in fact negotiate to run 2 meetings at Mallory, but by which time it was well aware to us that we weren't going to get back into Donnington, because the Donnington Circuit Club were then going to promote their own meetings, which meant that we would have been left with a championship based on two meetings at Mallory, and it just wasn't supportive.
And then, as fortune turned, 1979, the year we decided to terminate racing, we were actually offered dates for Mallory Park in 1980, which we had to decline, which was quite embarrassing at the time.
Time had come when we had to review our racing activities. It's something I felt very, very strongly about, very, very sad about, but I realised that we were at a crossroads, and it was one that we had to face up to if the club was going to survive. It had to go in a different direction. We'd already started with a fairly strong sprint programme, and it became well aware to me and to other people involved that was the way to go. And sadly, we had several meetings and made that decision.
After the break, we will introduce you to a new breed of enthusiast.